Hi, and welcome to the Bobby Carpenter Show. My man Anthony Schlegel sitting there ready to rock with his run the damn ball hat Schlegs, which I know you're super juiced about, getting fired up and ready to go. I'm not in my normal location, as you can obviously see, Schlegs. I am in the Clover Hotel in South Bend, Indiana. I'm going to do some work up here with XM tomorrow. I brought my man Cullen, my fifth grade son, up here. We're going to go see our guy Marcus, cruise on through the facility, do some stuff tomorrow, and then probably not going to stay for that Florida State Notre Dame game, Schleiss, because hopefully the game isn't going to be that good. Because if it is, that's a bad thing for our guy Marcus Freeman, because they're like 25-point favorites. Florida State has won one game. Notre Dame has only lost one. So hopefully they ultimately get that win. And we have the Buckeyes going off at noon tomorrow against Purdue in the shoe. We've got a number of other college football games that are going to be big. We're going to be joined by Connor O'Gara from Saturdays Down South. Talk a little bit about those big SEC matchups that are going to be happening that will be very consequential to the Big 12 or the college football playoff with everything that's going on there. So Schlegs, we starting off this show on Friday. We get keys to the game. We'll get that. We've got our guy. I don't know if you got a chance to hear Tim Walton's Thoughtful Thursday. Did you hear that?
Oh yeah.
Okay, good. He came up to me at practice yesterday. He's like, "You're gonna like this one." I'm like, "Dude, I can't wait. It's my favorite part of every week." So we'll toss that thing out this at the end of the show. So make sure you stick around. Tim Walton dropping some knowledge bombs out there for the folks and for the fellas each and every day. But Schleg's like, someone asked me like the feelings coming into this game and what it's about. I'm like, I don't know. Like, it's obviously not last week. You don't have those butterflies. You don't have that anxiety. Purdue is the worst team in the Big Ten. They're not very good. They lost in overtime to Northwestern last week, who might be the second worst team in the Big Ten. Their head coach fired their offensive coordinator. He's a defensive guy. So Schleg's their offense. They really don't run like, I wouldn't say a coherent offense, but they don't run a traditional offense. What they do, and for people that understand this a little bit, every front has things that you run against it. Every coverage has what you call beaters. And whether you're playing in cover 3 or cover 4 or single high man or 2-man or whatever it is, all these different coverages, guys, that people run, there's beaters to all of them. So that's why you try to disguise it, because with every coverage, you're going to be giving up something. So it's like they really don't run like a traditional offense. Like they just run beaters into all these coverages. They just try to guess what you're running, what you run the most of, and just run those beaters over and over again. And as a defensive coach, like it makes sense. That's what gives your guys trouble. And so it makes a lot of sense to do that. So it's kind of a disjointed offense. They only have 3 weeks of film to be able to look at. And it's a game where there's not going to be like a lot of cachet. So to me, this game, it starts off with shows the leadership of these Ohio State veterans and the leaders, whether it's Caleb Downs, who's a sophomore, or Will Howard, Seth McLaughlin, Cody Simon, Jack Sawyer, Emeka Ibuka, whoever it is. Like you saw the juice Donnie Jackson. We talked about it last week. The juice that these guys are going to be bringing, they've got to be bringing it again this week, because it's going to be that noon kind of sleepy start. It's Purdue. It's not, some big time, big name, top 10 environment. And Schlegs, when it comes down to it, man, it's all about the team.
All about the team, Coach.
All about the team.
I'll tell you, everybody, we're starting today, Bob, a little later, and got to take my wife out to Peppers down here and a little Mexican food. Let me tell you something. Right now, I'm feeling great, everybody, because I just filled my stomach with chicken and steak fajitas.
What were you sticking?
Yeah, whatever. It's a combo. Hey, man, hey, 2 F's in life. Anyways,
Buckeyes.
That being said, Buckeyes. But that being said, I feel great. Spicy Margs, awesome. Thinking about this game. And, side nugget. I want to put this. Bob, I just want to lift your spirits up, because I had a heater go out at my farmhouse, and we got people coming over for Thanksgiving. What do? Boom. Carpenter Heating and Cooling. Don't know that everybody knows that you own that business. And the guy that came out, I didn't get his name because I'm obviously in Jacksonville, Florida. My father-in-law is up there. He did a phenomenal job. He did great. So
Ricky Price is up there. Ricky Price is up there by himself while you're down in Florida.
Yeah, that's what happens, man. But it's also the rut and deer are moving. So I don't necessarily have to be there. Though I wish I controlled the rut to where it only happened when I was in the deer woods. It didn't. But let's talk about this game. we talked yesterday, if you're juiceless, you're useless. Hey, every time you get to go into Ohio Stadium, it's special. These cats right now, they got 3 more times. Purdue is one of the 3. Okay, so it's a special moment. How do you go out there and be that juice giver to start the game? Not only with your emotion, but more importantly with your action. And in these type of games, it's the communication aspect. Now, the disjointedness that is their offense and not necessarily their defense. So again, what we're looking for on the offensive side of the ball is really clean, no turnover, opportunistic type football game that complements it by doing what? After the book of Eli, the book of Seth says in chapter 5, verse 13, run the damn football. Also, side nugget, he's raised almost $10,000 to give back to local food banks in Columbus, Ohio. That's what the money's for. That's why I'm rocking it. That being said, how do our guys come out in this game? What we saw versus Nebraska, I think Nebraska is a better team than they were when they played Indiana, when they played us. We still missed some things, allowed that game to be closer, significantly closer than it should have been. We're able to persevere, show some resilience, and get the win, which I think brought some juice into the following week, just besides the fact that it is Penn State on the road versus the number 3 team. We want to see that carryover. We want to see a complete football game because also remember, moving forward, we have Northwestern. Indiana will be on a bye that week. So this is paramount. The next 2 weeks, starting with Purdue, again, live where your feet are. It's how do you play that complementary football, but really clean up those execution errors that you may have and allow this offensive line one more game to continue to gel.
Well, I think part of it too is you saw a lot of diverse runs, a lot of exciting stuff. And I think you're going to see probably of a more vanilla game plan in the next couple of weeks. I don't know if there's really a need to like go all in and empty that bag of tricks against Purdue, against Northwestern. If that's the case, then you feel like there might be something more systemically wrong with this team. But you saw that physical element come out. I think Ryan and Chip will want to start the tempo early, run the football. They'll take some shots over the top. They're going to score, dominate, obviously, from kickoff. Defensively, like this Purdue team is not good. If they get more than 6 points, I would be very disappointed in this. You should keep them out of the end zone, maybe a couple of field goals. But you've watched this defense play fast, play physical. They've been rotating well. The guys have been ultra aggressive. And so the key is for these leaders, Schlegel, can you keep that edge? And you're not going to need it the whole game. And that's what's tough. Like you want to get in this part of the season, you want to be battle hardened. If you're playing after that first series in the second half, something is wrong. So you want to make sure that you start fast, get everything done. You give the energy to the crowd. They see the success. They funnel it back to you. That should be the formula for this week. We'll talk about it again next week. And then you get to Indiana. Because I'm going to be watching Indiana play Michigan. And we'll get into that a little bit later. But Indiana's 14-point home favorites against Michigan. Michigan's been 2 touchdown dogs back-to-back, I think, for the first time in their school history. So they've got a lot of crap that they've got to get taken care of. There's a lot of issues that they've got to get remedied over there and get figured out. And so that's going to be part of it. Indiana's really good. Purdue, not as good. They play for the old oaken bucket at the end of the season, Schlegs, that old oaken bucket, the final game of the season. So they'll have that. And that's what it's all going to be pointing to. So these next 2 weeks, you've got to have everything turned up, ratcheted up, ready to go in a huge way. And you can't fall victim to the fact that, hey, it's a noon start. It's not a great team. And think that you're going to be starting a little bit, I don't want to say starting slow, but just have that lethargic feel that you had against Nebraska. You're going to beat Purdue. That's not a worry. You just can't have that start like you had before. And that's where the leadership comes in. Leadership, Schlegel, is getting yourself ready, but it's getting everybody else ready too. And so hopefully those guys will be able to get that done.
You know why? Because we're going to go eat. That's kind of the thing, right? So if you look at this Purdue team, terrible on third down, 35%, make them worse. They've given up 20 sacks this year. Guess what? Go eat. That's, again, another opportunity to go perform, another opportunity to go get yours with your teammates. And that's regardless of who does it, right? That's what you want. But we got to go out there and we got to eat. But how does that start, Bob? You already said it. Now, the hay's in the barn, man. It started in practice this week. You've been at those practices. You've seen what those guys are all about and how they handle their business. But that's kind of the mindset. When you're playing somebody that's inferior, regardless of sport, especially wrestling, first round of a tournament, you're seeded 1, right? They're seeded 16. Guess what? Go eat. Make quick work out of it, man. I'm going to work on my takedowns right now. Boom. Take them down. Center line double. Make them bleed a little bit. Fine. Little crossface here. Little couple guillotines there. Boom. Let them up. Take them down again. Be physical. On to the next, right? That's kind of the mindset that they need to have in this game. Know who they are. Respect your opponent. Never fear them. But then go out there and impose you on them and make sure that they know that you're the Ohio State Buckeyes.
I think what you're looking for, Schlegs, is respect all men, fear no man. We got Conor 𝗟𝗩𝗘 Saturdays Down South coming up here next. Before we get to him, we got Export, parents and athletes. Listen, protect what matters most with Export mouth guards. Designed by NHL team dentists, worn by professional athletes. They're scientifically tested and proven to help you absorb hits for both your teeth and your brain. They feature 30 layers of advanced protection. This carbon fiber that is custom 3D printed right to your grill for great protection, better performance, max comfort, clear communication, so you can focus on your game, not on your gear. Don't take chances with your safety. Go to exportguards.com/Bobby. By doing that, you save 15%. Export, protect what matters most. Conor 𝗟𝗩𝗘 coming up next.
We were called soft last year. You don't want to be soft, especially when you come to the playoffs. So that's going to be a process throughout this season of establishing us as a harder team here in the.
I'm Garage Beer, and this is Bobby Carpenter.
Garage Beer. Beer flavored beer.
Beef with an F? Okay, my bad. It's crisp and cool, and it doesn't taste like. I'm Bobby Carpenter. I drink in garages because my wife says I don't belong inside. If you like a cold breeze on your bag, drink Garage Beer. It's American, and so can you. Garage Beer. Beer flavored beer.
I don't buy into this nonsense, this conspiracy nonsense that he's got his money and he's dogging it. That's ridiculous.
All right, welcome back in the Bobby Carpenter Show. And now pleased to welcome our guy from Saturdays Down South, Conor 𝗟𝗟𝗘𝗓. Excited to see him on here. Got a big weekend slate in the SEC. Conor, as we look down there, maybe some games that might be kind of de facto elimination games. I want to start with the one that's going to be going on down in Baton Rouge with Alabama traveling to LSU, and kind of your thoughts on if a 9-3 SEC team do you think can ultimately get in? And if so, could Bama withstand a third loss?
First of all, appreciate you guys having me. Yes, I do believe a 9-3 SEC team can get into the college football playoff, but it's not Alabama, it's Georgia. I think Georgia, you look at the strength of schedule and the potential losses that they would have and how they would stack up. Also having that win at Texas, I think is just going to matter a little bit more in the college football playoff. Whereas Alabama, you kind of look at it, and yes, it's great that they have the Georgia win at home, but if they lose this game to LSU, there's just going to be too many teams that are blocking them. And I think you could kind of look at the top of the playoff and look at the at-large teams and say, yeah, Bama's just not getting in over these teams without the head-to-head against a team like Tennessee. And, you know, Vandy's not necessarily going to be in the mix, but against LSU, of course. So, yeah, I think this game is monumental. And it's ironic that this game is only monumental because of the 12-team playoff. You know, LSU and Alabama, the winner of this game has gone on to play in the SEC championship 14 of the last 17 years. So there's a certain standard that we expect for Alabama and LSU, but this year does feel different. It is very much an elimination game.
Why is that? I mean, why, besides the fact that the Alabama woes that we had, that kind of the inconsistency, like just to your point, Conor, because we haven't been able to talk to you a lot in the SEC, like, is it parity? Is it lack of execution? I mean, we saw like in that game, LSU just running for 245 yards against LSU. LSU brings in a new coordinator. Some games they look really good. Some games they don't. Now you got Alabama. Some games they look really good. Beat Georgia, and then boom, here they are versus Tennessee. Lose to Vandy. Now you're going to LSU, and like everybody's like, what's going to happen? Like, why is this happening this year in the SEC?
Yeah, the boring answer is there's a lot of parity. There's not that one truly elite team, and even Georgia fans would admit it. And if your quarterback is throwing 3 interceptions every single game like Georgia's is, I don't think you can call yourself that elite team. So you look around the conference and you're like, yeah, why is there this parity? Why does it feel like it's been spread out a little bit differently? You know, I think a lot of it has to do with NIL and the transfer portal. How does a team like Vandy beat Alabama? Well, I think Vandy's much better than what we were thinking at the time when that upset happened, obviously. But at the same time, Vandy's able to kind of turn over its roster and basically just import all of these pieces from New Mexico State. And they're a totally different team than they were in the first 3 years of the Clark Lee era. Why is Alabama more susceptible? I think they don't have the depth that they're used to having. They're also not used to not having the greatest coach in the history of college football to be able to troubleshoot in the middle of some of these games, which is a big part of it. But it comes down to discipline. Bama's just too undisciplined, and they've gotten away with it in years past, I think, because they've had Nick Saban making some of these adjustments. But you look at the penalty yards, man. Alabama and Ole Miss are the two worst in the SEC when it comes to that. And they're two teams that are fighting for their playoff lives this weekend, trying to avoid that third loss.
So you go to the Ole Miss game and you look a little bit at that, and they're playing Georgia this week, and Georgia plays Ole Miss. They play Tennessee. As you mentioned, they could lose both of those. They would be in trouble then, maybe at 9-3, possibly still getting in. If Ole Miss loses, though, if you look at their schedule, Connor, it's kind of set up where I thought they would go maybe 11-1, possibly 10-2, with Georgia being one of those losses. I mean, their back's up against the wall right now. Lane's built this thing up. This was supposed to be the year they make it in, expanded playoff. What has happened this year, and then what are their chances of pulling this upset?
If Ole Miss loses this game to Georgia, which, by the way, only a 2.5-point spread, still feels very much like a coin flip type game with this being in Oxford. I know Lane Kiffin wishes it was at night, and he was very upset about that. And the fact that they're playing in the day, whatever, go in a football game, beat Kentucky, and then you don't have to worry about, playing night football games. That kind of, takes care of itself. But, for Lane, this is everything. We spent the entire offseason talking about this is the time. This is 12 years now removed from being the preseason #1 team in America as the head coach at USC, and feeling like you've got everything in front of you, and everything that Lane Kiffin had been working towards had been building up to that moment. And then what happens? They win 7 games that season at USC, ends that season in El Paso. A year later, Tarmac Bowl. That happens, and Lane Kiffin ultimately has to go on a new path as a head coach. And this moment is so big for him, because if you can't win this one, everybody's going to leave Lane Kiffin in that tier 2 for a long time, and they'll treat him like an unserious football coach. He might be one of the best offensive minds in all of college football, but reality is this is someone who has had all the opportunities, and you spent this money in the transfer portal. Money well spent, by the way. The defensive adjustments that they've made this year with those pieces, it's been worth it. But if you don't have those guys on the offensive line, you can't run the football, which they've really atypically struggled with in SEC play. We're going to think differently of you than what we did in the preseason. But if you beat Georgia, it's all for naught, and you're in a very, very different spot than you were when you're getting criticized a couple of weeks earlier coming into this matchup.
Yeah, I mean, really, when you look at this game, I mean, Jackson Dart threw for 515 yards, right? 6 touchdowns. Jordan Watkins just absolutely went off. But defensively, they had 8 sacks, 13 TFL. And then you got Carson Beck coming in there. What do you think they have to do, meaning Ole Miss, to actually get this win at home?
I think it's pretty simple. I think it's force Carson Beck into more of these turnovers, and don't turn those turnovers into field goals. Turn those turnovers into touchdowns. I mean, that is the clear blueprint that Georgia has given a variety of teams. And, how can Ole Miss do that? Well, they have 17 more TFLs than anybody in college football right now. I mean, that's crazy. It's like 94 they have, and the next closest is 77. They've been phenomenal, and Perkins has been great. Numan Mielen's been awesome coming over from Florida. Walter Nolan from A&M. And then what they continue to do is find ways to frustrate quarterbacks. They will get in the backfield by day's end. Can you do that against the Georgia offensive line that's been good, not great, a little bit banged up, and not typically the world beater that we come to expect from them? I think you can, and I think you can get some of those spots. but what can they do late to close out a game? That's what I'd be worried about, because they cannot run the football the same way that they have in years past. They're going to be without Henry Parrish Jr., the boomerang transfer who came back this year after a few years at Miami, came back to Ole Miss. He was their leading rusher. He's out. Matt Jones is going to be out as well. Maybe even Trey Harris is going to be out for this one. Jordan Watkins is listed as doubtful after he set the world on fire last week. Who knows? Lane Kiffin kind of making a joke of this injury report. But yeah, we're I think expecting a really good game. But can Ole Miss close out a team like Georgia, and can Lane Kiffin make those decisions better than Kirby Smart? That's what I kind of have my eyebrow raised with.
So you mentioned Georgia's inability to run the ball, and I think that's contributed to Carson Beck's struggles a little bit, Connor, with his interceptions this year and it being inflated over what we've seen. Is this an offensive line thing for them? Is this a running backs thing? Is it a coordinator change thing? Like what, and when you've been seeing this and watching these games, what is the issue that you find with their inability to run it? Because they've been able to run it really pretty successfully since Kirby got there.
They just don't have the depth in the backfield. I mean, Trevor Etienne, he obviously starts off the year with, unfortunately, a very familiar headline for Georgia with an off-the-field incident, a driving-related incident. He has the one-game suspension. I felt like it took him a little bit to get his legs under him. And then when he was finally starting to look like he was really the Trevor Etienne that they got from Florida, he gets a rib injury and he's out in the whole second half of that game last week. And now all of a sudden they're going to be without a couple of their backs. They just don't have the depth there that we've come to expect. Maybe part of that is the transfer portal NIL thing. And guys just don't necessarily sit there as five-star true freshmen waiting for their opportunities. Nate Frazier's a good player. He's the guy that could get some running going for Georgia and could get some of those big plays, but they've kind of had to get creative. You'll see those end arounds to Dylan Bell, and you'll see them trying to do things with more of the receiver game where it's quick passes to the outside, the bubble screen type stuff, where they're just really trying to do things that are high percentage plays to get the offense going, because they just don't have the depth to be able to lean on that backfield. It's the first time in the Kirby Smart era that they have thrown for more passes per game than they've run the ball for more times per game. 7 more times they're throwing the ball more than they're running it per game. They've never done that. This is year 9 of the Kirby Smart era. Different identity with this team, and it kind of speaks to the personnel.
That's it's just part of life, man. It's resiliency. As we're getting into this college football playoff, you got to have depth. Like people forget, like now the NIL and the transfer portal, it's roster management, but also we're getting into that NFL model because you are playing more games in the year. You got to have your dudes healthy when it matters most, and November's for contenders. Tell us a little bit about this Florida-Texas game. Florida going on the road. They're 4-4. They have played better. And they came out and said, Billy Napier, because I got buddies down here in Jacksonville that work down there, and they said it, and then it just went viral, right, that he's still staying. Helps because they're 38th in recruiting right now. So now that people know that he's staying, maybe that'll help a little bit. But do they have a chance with DJ Lagway not being able to be a quarterback?
Yeah, not expected to play. I won't definitively say he's not playing in this one. Remember,
okay,
Texas native, he came to Florida despite all of those Texas schools recruiting him, by the way, after he was already at Florida. That's something that people don't talk about very much, was that, there was rumors that he was a little bit homesick, and he's still getting recruited by some of these schools in the state of Texas that were like, DJ, come home, come back to the Lone Star State. And he wants to show the world that he is that guy. And he has put it on himself to be able to say, look, I want to be the guy who turns this program around. Don't rule out the idea of him being out there. I would hope that he's not going to be, after the way that things played out. Non-contact hamstring injury, you always worry about that. That turf in Jacksonville, man, you got to get that figured out. Like, I don't know what they're doing over there, but it was like every other play that a dude was going down because of that turf. It was bad. But yeah, if not, Aiden Warner, walk-on transfer from Yale. That wouldn't be good against a Texas defense that's 1 and 2 in FBS and a lot of these different categories. And I'd be very worried if I'm a Florida fan. But you're right, they've played hard. I mean, they had no business being in that game against Georgia with how depleted they were, by the end of that game. And they were still playing in a 60-minute football game. So you just never rule it out. Maybe a little bit of shot of life with the vote of confidence for Billy Napier. And who knows? I mean, Texas has kind of played with its food a little bit this year.
How much of the DJ Lagway commitment to Billy Napier is saving his job? And do you believe that he's the guy, Billy, that is, to be able to turn this thing around? I know they're not firing him, and they're going to keep him. Part of that is probably the fact that everyone's going to be paying their players $20 million next year. So like that on top of a $30 million buyout, it's a pretty hefty sum for any university to be able to swallow. But I've just seen Florida since Urban Meyer. I mean, they've been churning coaches at some point. Like if he's the guy, and I think Connor, he's kind of exceeded expectations relative to the hand that he was dealt, and they're playing pretty good football. Is DJ his commitment to them, and do you think he can be the guy for them long term?
A couple of things there. DJ Lagway is such an integral part of this decision with Billy Napier, and I'll go as far as to say I think it's even more important and more influential than the $20 million that these schools are going to be spending to be able to cover their athletes. Everything that I was told about the situation in Florida was they had the funds raised after the A&M loss. And so they had that money ready to go. This was not going to be an issue and then not only did they have that money ready to go, but they were going to be willing to go out and spend big for someone like Lane Kiffin. So money was not an obstacle for Florida. But, you kind of look at the situation right now with Lagway. You weren't going to fire Billy Napier and keep DJ Lagway. And this is a Gatorade National Player of the Year who so far has looked the part, in my opinion. And I want all the DJ Lagway stock. And I think there was an element of Florida where they really wanted that. And they wanted to see what this could look like next year with the team playing harder, defense looking like it's better than really any point during the 2020s decade. Seriously, go look it up. It's been really bad for that Florida defense for the last 5 seasons. So I think they wanted to double down on that. I don't think that he's going to be the guy long term. But do I think that giving him a year 4 and seeing this experiment through makes a little bit of sense? And there is definitely some upside in it. I do. But it's got to start turning around right now. And this has to be the point where people start buying in, because otherwise they're not going to recruit and they're not going to get the bodies in there that they need.
All right, we're going to take a quick break here. I want to get a little more with Connor because there's a couple LSU questions I have, and then kind of a big picture college football. So Connor, we're going to take a quick break. We got more with Connor O'Gara coming up next. All right, back here with Connor O'Gara, a little bit more SEC talk. And how big, we were talking about Bama and LSU, and you were talking about, the importance of Bama winning that game and what's going on there. Importance for Brian Kelly to get a signature win. I mean, they've been pretty good this year. Like the inexplicable loss is that USC opener, which USC obviously doesn't look good anymore, and it's kind of dragging them down. But outside of that, before A&M, they were rolling. Like how much does he need this win in order to maybe quell some of the doubts and questions about him down in Baton Rouge?
Badly. And for what it's worth, I don't think big from a perspective of he needs to win this game or else he's going to get fired. They're not going to pay $67 million to fire a coach that's won 10 games each of his first 2 seasons there. Like that but from a different perspective, it's so big. I mean, guys, if Brian Kelly doesn't win this game, the entire offseason, he will get reminders of it, because you're going to miss out on the college football playoff if you lose this game. I guess they still have a backdoor path to be able to get to the SEC championship, wouldn't necessarily rule that out. But if you miss on an opportunity like this, where it feels like the conference is wide open and you have Bama on the ropes and you get them at home, Death Valley at night, which, by the way, Brian Kelly is yet to lose in that setting, Death Valley at night. So if you see that streak end against Alabama, an Alabama team that's very vulnerable, in my opinion, then yeah, you're going to hear about it. And going into year 4, people will be like, so this is the Brian Kelly experience so far, $100 million. You paid for this, haven't gotten into the playoff yet. And, went to one SEC championship year 1, but wasted a Heisman Trophy season from Jay Daniels year 2. And then year 3 outside looking in a 12-team playoff era. Like, not exactly the best vibe all around, but yeah, it's so important, because if they win, the path to get to 10-2 is sitting right there, and LSU could be looking at a playoff berth.
Yeah, going into, I think Bob wants to get into more national stuff, and I want to ask you this about where we are. You got 4 teams right now, SEC in the college football playoff, being Georgia, Texas, Tennessee, Alabama, sitting out. Boom, you got A&M, LSU, Ole Miss, and they're all kind of playing. I mean, this Georgia going Ole Miss, Tennessee, then of course UMass and Georgia Tech, cool, but the next 2 weeks, quite frothy. You know, who do you see right now in this mix going into this weekend? Who do you feel are your top two going to the SEC championship game?
It's boring to say Texas and Georgia, but that's still where I'm leaning, you know, and there's definitely a world in which A&M could beat Texas in that regular season finale. It's great that those two teams are finally playing again. Something, you know, college football fans shouldn't have had to wait over a decade to see that. But yeah, I'll still go Georgia and Texas. I predicted going into the season that they were going to face each other 3 times this year. And one of those being in the SEC championship and then another in the college football playoff semifinal, or national championship rather. And so right now, I mean, I think there's still a decent chance of that because of what Texas has done well defensively. But yeah, I don't really feel great in saying that. And that's kind of the beauty of this divisionless SEC this year, is that you could just be the hottest team down the stretch. And maybe if you have 1 or 2 conference losses, you get to make that run to Atlanta. Texas A&M has never been to the SEC championship. Ole Miss has never been to the SEC championship. It's one of those 2 teams about to make a statement in November and be able to get there. I won't rule it out, but for me, I'm going to trust the 2 coaches that I believe are doing it better than anybody in this conference, maybe better than anybody in college football right now. And that is Kirby Smart and obviously Steve Sarkisian and what he's done. So yeah, that's the boring answer, but are there tons of possibilities? Yes. And it's great that we're going to have this November of all these different showdowns.
So, Connor, I think the Big Ten, it's pretty clear. And you look at the pathways for the 4 teams in the Big Ten, 3 of them I think get in for sure. I really probably believe it's 4. I think the ACC and Big 12 are probably one big league. So it leaves 2 more spots after Texas and Georgia for the SEC. There's about 5 or 6 teams I think that you could probably pencil in depending on how these next couple weeks go. Who do you think those final couple teams will ultimately be?
Yeah. If I'm projecting right now, I think Texas and Georgia are both going to be in. I think Tennessee's going to find its way in at 10-2, even if they don't beat Georgia. So I think that's like the 3 that I feel best about. But man, is there a world in which the winner of this Alabama LSU winner gets in as well? Yeah, I definitely think so. I think that's probably the most likely scenario. And A&M could be, unfortunately for them, after the South Carolina loss, 1 loss away from being knocked out, because I think that Texas wins that regular season finale. So yeah, I think it's 4 from the SEC. I do think it's 4 from the Big Ten, despite the fact that, look, as an Indiana grad, is there part of me that is looking at 11-1 and wondering if the powers that be are going to leave out the Hoosiers and just say, you know what, you lost that game to Ohio State. You just, you know, you didn't prove it in the only game that mattered. There's definitely some concern there, but I do think that the Big Ten and SEC ultimately end up getting 4 teams apiece into the field.
So let me ask you this. Let's say let me say for argument's sake that Texas A&M beats Texas at the end of the season. Do they, and I don't know how all the tiebreakers work, and hell, I don't know if anybody knows how all these tiebreakers are going to work across all these conferences. It's a mess, especially when you have multiple teams that some teams haven't played each other, some teams have, and you all have 1 or 2 losses. What the heck does that look like? I don't know. But if A&M does somehow pull that out, you think that it could bump maybe the winner of that Bama and LSU game, given the gravity of what that would mean for that team?
Yeah, because they're going to have the advantage over LSU with the head-to-head and what they did down the stretch in that one. And I think the selection committee putting them ahead of LSU in those first rankings is kind of an indicator of that. And if they add a win like Texas to it, that would definitely be, you know, I think on the table for A&M. The issue is what happens if Notre Dame is sitting there at 11-1 and they're not going to be playing in the conference championship. They can only compete for that at large bid. You're going to put a Notre Dame team that's only got 1 loss ahead of A&M. Now, if Notre Dame loses that second game, that changes things. And I don't think they will, because the schedule sets up really well for the Irish. Go figure that their toughest remaining game is against Army at a neutral site. Like, that's just the year that's been for them. But I think Notre Dame is the team that, if I'm a fan of anybody right now that's got a little bit of a trickier path to the conference championship, I'm looking at the Irish and I'm praying for a loss, which I realize is ironic given the shirt that I'm wearing that looks like a Notre Dame shirt. It's actually a Robeck shirt. Shout out Robeck. I know that's
South
Ohio
Bend
based
right now, Connor. Like, I'm up here.
Look, you get it.
I thought it was going to be a good game against Florida State. I signed up with XM to come up here for this one. And then, I mean, Florida State is about the most underwhelming team in the world. So I think Notre Dame probably takes care of business and handles everything that they need to ultimately get in. Is Miami, like, what are your thoughts on the Hurricanes? because you're talking about Indiana, and I've heard people tell me they're ranked too low, they're ranked too high. Like nobody could say like, 8's okay. It's either they haven't played anybody or they beat everybody by 2 scores, which is true. But I look at like the schedule they played versus the schedule Miami's played, and I think Indiana's handled about the same quality of teams and handled them all very impressively. They've only been down once, and that was last week. And so I think that they're just as good as Miami.
From your lips to God's ears, Bobby. I mean, look, that's it right there. And I know I'm going to come off biased by saying this. It's been a tricky thing for your boy to navigate that I'm very unfamiliar with Indiana football. But yeah, look, you're exactly right. And I think BYU is another team that, look, they have wins against 2 teams that are in the current CFP top 25. And BYU is sitting there undefeated. And yeah, they're not perfect, but they have 2 convincing wins. Like, what are we doing here? They beat SMU on the road. They beat Kansas State like 38-9 in that game. It was kind of a weird game, but still, you're like, why is BYU sitting there, 5 spots behind Miami and Indiana? Like, yes, the schedule is what it is, but it's not just the offense. With Miami, it's just the offense. Let's just say it. Yeah. We love Cam Ward. Cam Ward's great. He's unbelievable. I think he's got a lot of Brett Favre to his game, and I think he's so fun to watch. But Indiana's doing it on both sides of the ball, and Indiana has been able to do it with offense and defense. I think they're top 5 in the country in both yards per play on offense and on defense. And it's just a team that, look, if you're trying to pass the eye test, what more eye test do you want than the team that's got the largest scoring margin differential in all of college football? That's Indiana. So yeah, you're exactly right. I can't be the one to say that. It sounds better coming from you.
I appreciate it, Connor. Thank you for spending some time, man. You gave us way too much today. We really appreciate it. You were the first guest we ever had on the show, and we'll be sure to have you back here soon.
Gentlemen, really appreciate it.
Thanks, Connor.
It's Connor Garrett, Saturdays Down South. Give him a follow on X. Does a great job there, doing a great job covering the SEC and nationally. Coming up next, we've got our headlines. We've got some big ones. And as always, our tailgate talk and a great one from a thoughtful Thursday from our guy, Tim Walton. All that coming up here on the Bobby Carpenter Show. Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Bobby Carpenter. I want to give a huge thank you and a shout out to Affinity Whole Health, the leaders in the testosterone replacement industry. I've been on a testosterone replacement program for a few years right now, and I've got to tell you, it's been an absolute game changer. Affinity Whole Health has allowed me to be the best version of myself, both mentally and physically. I loved how easy it was to get started. I booked my free consultation, met with my prescriber, checked my numbers, and Affinity Whole Health designed a program that was customized to fit my needs. So I'm telling you guys, if you have low energy, you want to get rid of that spare tire around the waist or take it to the next level in the bedroom, Affinity Whole Health is the place to get started. So don't wait any longer. 5 minutes of your time, book your free consultation. You're going to love the way you feel. All right, welcome back into the Bobby Carpenter Show, and headlines are brought to you by our friends over at Affinity Whole Health. They can put together a personalized treatment program to help fit your needs, whatever you're trying to do, whether you've got weight loss issues, muscle loss issues, poor quality of sleep. They can help you with all of that, dudes, dudettes. They are here for you. I've been a patient there for the last 8 years. They do a great job with everything. It's real easy. You go to affinitywholehealth.com. You set up your free consultation. You take that then. They develop a plan for you. They ship the stuff to your door within 2 days. And so whether you want semaglutide for weight loss, pair that up with the testosterone program, they've got it all. Dudes, dudettes, they can customize a plan for you. So go to affinitywholehealth.com and check them out. Now, Schlegel, we're talking about getting physical there. You want to get beefed up. You want to get strong. The most physical team is going to win the game. That's usually what happens in football. Urban Meyer commented on that and talked about coming into Penn State. There were some concerns because as you watch them and their inability to maybe run the football and do some other things, like when you needed to, would you be able to run it? And so, Pat, we're going to throw that up there with Urban. He came out and said, the most physical team will win the national championship. I think he wholly believes that because if you can go up and get 4 yards every play, you're great. Ohio State, there were concerns. I don't have any more concerns. I saw what I saw. And that with regard to that top 5 win against Penn State.
Yeah, run the damn ball. Seth 5-13. And, Urban prided himself on it. I think that Ohio State, I'm not going to say got away from it, but the passing abilities and the talent that we had, it wasn't necessarily necessary. But the ability to physically impose your will on someone else in all of sport matters. And that's just the fact. Even in the league, guys, the team that can still run the football to make sure that people are honest can win the football game, right? In college football, the teams that win, we've seen it. We got a game coming up here in 3 weeks, man. That game is won on turnovers and winning the line of scrimmage, period. It's been that way for over 100 years. Okay, we're just not talking about it. It is real. So I think when he was able to see that in a 4-minute drill versus a very, very good physical Penn State defense, that was all he needed to see. Because, and there's been a lot of people out there, right, and I saw it positive, yeah, Bob, about Will Howard. But like the offensive line being able to do that just helps him more. Absolutely. And helps the offense more.
So let's segue right into Will Howard, because Ryan Day had some comments on him talking about this. I think if you have a tough offensive line, you're going to have a tough quarterback, and maybe vice versa. Maybe those things are symbiotic. But Ryan Day's comments on Will Howard. Will is gutsy. Will is a leader. He's got toughness. He's got resilience. You saw that in the PSU game. The conversation, the huddle going into that last drive, everything about it is exactly what you want out of your quarterback.
Woo. Pretty high praise, right? Coming from a former quarterback himself and the leader of the team, meaning Ryan Day, like that's what you want your quarterback to be about and act that way and go get the hard yards. And we saw that in instances where we potentially would have ran the ball or done something cute. No, Will Howard from the goal line, 4 yards. Will Howard, 3rd and 2, boom, 4 yards. Like that's what you want to see. He likes that aspect of it. He wants to be that guy. And he is 100% all about being a Buckeye. And I think to your point, Bob, that we've talked about, it takes a little bit of time for teams to come together and know where your fit is and what that team might need from you. And now we're getting all of Will Howard.
Absolutely. And then lastly here, we're going to talk about one of the amazing freshmen at Ohio State. Didn't in his first game in college, not having a touchdown, Jeremiah Smith, JJ Smith, getting awarded as a semifinalist to the Sean Alexander Freshman of the Year award. Because I don't really foresee a way that he doesn't win this unless he just absolutely melts here the last couple weeks of the season, which you know the type of guy he is. That is not going to happen.
No, not going to happen. It's funny, we read something the other day about people talking about Marvin Harrison Jr.'s work ethic and catching all these balls after practice, that his hands are going to hurt. Like, no, that's just Marvin Harrison Jr. Guess what? That's zone 6, guys. I'm just saying, like, they just do things different. This kid's prepared. This kid knows what he has to do week in and week out. He can do it with his feet, does it with his hands, but he is a phenomenal blocker on the perimeter. That, to me, is the most impressive thing about this young man. He's selfless, and he wants to get in the mix, and he's a fantastic player. I hope he gets this award.
Absolutely. Coming up next, we've got our keys of the game, and going to drop you out a little nugget from our guy, Tim Walton, coming up on his Thoughtful Thursday, coming up here in Tailgate Talk, brought to you by Real Truck on the Bobby Carpenter Show.
We were called soft last year. You don't want to be soft, especially when you come to the playoffs. So that's going to be a process throughout this season of establishing us as a harder team here in the
Building a home for the people who are worth it. Stepping out, throwing in a line, and dropping the tailgate for a picnic. And finding far-off campsites with the people you're closest to. Upgrade your truck, Jeep, or Bronco with over 1 million parts and accessories. And bring your truck to life. Real Truck.
I don't buy into this nonsense, this conspiracy nonsense that he's got his money and he's dogging it. That's ridiculous.
All right, we got our tailgate talk brought to you by our friends at Real Truck Schlegs. Go to realtruck.com to trick out your truck, your Jeep, your Bronco, interior, exterior. They can do it all. They've got the best stuff from across the country. They can ship it right to you. They have the ultimate upgrades for an ultimate tailgate party. And here's the best part. If you go to realtruck.com right now, you spend $100, truck, Jeep, Bronco, whatever it is, interior, exterior. You put promo code Bobby in when you're done. You're going to get a free hat. So you spend $100, you get a free hat. It's a tremendous value. It's going to be there for you. Realtruck.com. Do what Schlegs and I did and bring your truck to life. All right, Schlegs, Purdue, Ohio State, big noon kick, Saturday in the shoe. Give me your 3 keys.
Yeah, buckle up, Buttercup, run the damn ball. Number 1. Number 2, no turnovers. No turnovers. Create turnovers. Create tackles for loss, sacks, but no turnovers. Win the turnover battle. And then 3, young guys execute. We saw a guy last week, Brandon Ennis, execute. Didn't run at one time full speed. Went out there, game speed, touchdown. Let's see how these young guys are maturing. And then also watch the older guys as they go in, people. That's kind of what I'm looking at as a coach.
It's championship rep right there, Schlegs. Number 1 for me, I'm going to say it's the leadership element from these guys. We started the show with it. It's going to be important for them to start fast. Make sure they have that energy. Make sure you have the juice. Everybody on each other's hats. It needs to look like Penn State. And obviously, it's not Penn State. It's not the gravity of the game. You're not on the road. You're not fighting 110,000 people. But you need to have that. And that's part of the leadership. Whether they're young, old, offense, defense, you need to see those guys go do it. Howard, McLaughlin, Downs, Sawyer, Cody, Simon, Emeka Ibuka, Donovan Jackson, all of them, everybody, Trey, they all need to be involved, bringing that energy, making sure they get going. Number 2, Ryan's talked about it. They spend a lot of time and effort on special teams. It's time to make a special teams play. They've got some different guys back there returning punts. Caleb's been involved with returning punts. They've thrown some of the bigger guys on kickoff returns. Hopefully they get a couple opportunities to be able to do that, keep making field goals, flip the field and punt, and be able to get that done. And then the last key, you talked about running the damn ball, Schlegs. This should be a bloodletting up front. They should be able to run it for 7-8 yards a pop, really whenever they want to. Take some shots down the field. Purdue's made some plays on the inside. Against Northwestern, their interior guys did some good stuff. But I want to see these guys, Carson Hinsman, continue to elevate your game. The 3 guys inside with him, McLaughlin, and Shabola need to really get after it. Donovan's only going to get better at tackle. So those are my 3 things that I want to see. Now, our favorite part each and every week, Schlegs, Thoughtful Thursday. Our guy, old G, Tim Walton, drops out some nuggets to the folks, to his defensive backs about everything. This is about life, game, ball, all of it. This was his this week.
This one here, Thoughtful Thursday. Honor your name. Honor your name. You got to take pride in your name, man. It got to mean something to you. You got it from your father. It was all he had to give. So it's yours to use and cherish as long as you may live. If you lose the watch he gave you, it can always be replaced. But a black mark on your name can never be erased. It was clean the day you took it, a worthy name to bear. When he got it from his father, there was no dishonor there. So make sure you guard it wisely. After all is said and done, you'll be glad your name is spotless when you give it to your son.
Felt that.
All right? Take pride in your name, man. Honor your name. When you put it on the back of your jersey, man, it means everything. You represent more than just yourself. All right, take pride in it, man. It carries you for a long time. All right, ready?
Already.
Here we go. That's the best. Dude of the week. Yep. Coming up next.
Start.
The Big Play Sports Network. Download the free app today to watch all of your favorite hosts on demand.
I'm Garage Beer, and this is Bobby Carpenter.
Garage Beer. Beer flavored beer.
Beef with an F? Okay, my bad. It's crisp and cool, and it doesn't taste like I'm Bobby Carpenter. I drink in garages because my wife says I don't belong inside. If you like a cold breeze on your bag, drink garage beer. It's American, and so can you. Garage beer, beer flavored beer. All right, Schlegs, dude of the week. Dude's not a gender. Dude's a lifestyle. Can be dudes, dudettes, whoever it is. Let me know who you got.
I got a couple of dudes. Before I get to my real dude, shout out men's soccer team, OSU. We're number 1 in the country. They're number 2 in the country, but they won the Big Ten championship, their share of it. But my dudes of the week, because we're talking about football Americano, offensive line, 5'13", 11 plays, Buckeyes. How about you, Bob?
You know what? The Ohio State soccer team, that's tremendous because our men's soccer team was Garbaggio about 6 years ago. So that's tremendous that they're rolling like that. Love to see it. You mentioned the offensive line. It's a guy that I talked about earlier in the show today. Will Howard, you brought him in for one specific reason, to go win, to be a winner, to help win championships. He may not always play a perfect game, but I was like, he's the only dude I know that could have 2 turnovers, critical turnovers in a game, and I would still say played a pretty darn good football game. He's a leader. He's passionate. They're going to need him these next 3 to 4 weeks. Go get it, Will. Dude of the week for me as well. So that's it for today's show. Schlegs, what do you got for your score prediction for Purdue?
45-0.
I like where your head's at there. I'm going to go 49-6. No touchdowns, 2 field goals. Hopefully the Bucs get it rolling against Purdue. Stay locked in. We'll see you here 12:30 live on the YouTube machine. Bobby Carpenter and Anthony Schlegel, The Bobby Carpenter Show.